All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. I'm your host, Drew Manning.
And I'm your co-host, Lynn Manning.
Thank you guys so much for joining us for another great episode here on the podcast. We always appreciate you guys tuning in. Today, we have a special episode for you guys. A good friend of mine, Craig Preisendorf.
There you go.
Yep, I think I'm pronouncing it right. He's actually a good friend of mine from FitCon, you guys. He's one of the owners of FitCon. He's known on social media as the superhero maker, which is a pretty bold statement. So basically, he makes superheroes, and what we mean by that is he trains high level athletes. You know, he has some MMA athletes under his belt. He has other types of athletes. He's been a personal trainer for a long time, been in the industry for a long time. He kind of gets into his background of coming up, as a bodybuilder, and that's what first got him started. And then he kind of dives into his journey to ketosis. Like now, he's a huge advocate of it and talking about nutrition for your brain, you guys. So we kind of dive into ketosis for fat loss, ketosis for women. Yep. So we get into hormones and talking about how, some of his clients have even gotten pregnant, even though they said their doctor said they couldn't get pregnant while on ketosis. But we'll dive into that a little bit later. We get into exogenous ketones and these new smart drugs. So if you guys have seen the movie Limitless, right? There's this pill that he takes, and that's not realistic, of course. But there is this emerging product that's coming out or has been out for a while. These smart drugs, which Tim Ferriss has talked about on his podcast, and a lot of people in the industry have used, and Craig created one of his own called Lucid. So he talks about what that is and what that does realistically for your brain. So before we dive into this episode, you guys, there's a lot of great gems in this episode. Before we dive in, our show sponsor is Ketogenics. Now, Ketogenics.com is a exogenous ketone supplement company. You've heard me talk about it. You've heard me post about it. I, too, am a huge fan of nutritional ketosis. But what's so cool about these exogenous ketone supplements from Ketogenics are that it puts your body into a state of ketosis that helps accelerate that process. So basically, you can test your blood ketone levels before taking it, which, let's say, if you're eating a lot of carbs, you probably aren't in ketosis. And then you take this product, and then within 60 minutes, you can test your blood ketone levels and have a reading of anywhere from 0.5 to 1 millimolar of blood ketones in your blood now. So it's a revolutionary product. It's something very new that a lot of companies aren't even making this product, and it's such a unique product. I'm a big fan of it. If you guys want to learn more about it, if you want to try it out, please use my code FIT2FAT2FIT. That code will give you 30% off, you guys, for my Fit to Fat to Fit followers. So go to Ketogenics.com, use the code FIT2FAT2FIT, look into this nutritional ketosis, look into what these exogenous ketones from Ketogenics can do for you, not just for fat loss or weight loss. That's not what it's about, but look and see what it can do for you from a cognitive function, cognitive performance standpoint, mental clarity, focus, energy, better mood, so many health benefits to being in a state of ketosis.
And our other show sponsor is Quest Nutrition, questnutrition.com. You can see the link in the show notes. Now, most people have heard of Quest by this point. They are one of the, I think actually the most popular protein bar on the market. I must say that I enjoyed Quest protein bars before it was cool. Okay. I mean, now it's cool to eat them, but I have been actually enjoying them for years. And the big thing for me, you guys, is nothing replaces food. Okay. Just general whole foods. But most people like myself are out and about. I run a couple businesses. I have 2 kids. I'm always on the go. And the biggest trap for fast food is not having a quality source of protein that is nearby me. And so for me, I like to keep Quest protein bars. I keep it at my office. I keep it in my purse. I keep a couple in my car since they're not going to perish in the car or go bad. So, and I need high in fiber, low in net carbs. So if I need something real quick, I grab that instead of going through the fast food line. So my favorite flavor, because people ask me all the time, is cookie dough. But I also like white chocolate raspberry, and I like the double chocolate chunk. I like a lot of their different flavors, and also their Quest protein chips are delicious, and I like to give those to my kids as a snack alternative to the terrible trans fats in normal potato chips. So check it out.
All right, you guys, let's go ahead and hang out with Craig Preisendorf.
There you go.
All right, what's up, Craig? Welcome to the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. How you doing today, man?
Phenomenal. How you guys doing?
Good.
We're doing great, man. Thanks for coming on. Now, let me make sure I pronounce your name right for everybody, listening to this. Is it Priesendorf or Prisendorf?
Preisendorf.
Like Preisendorf.
Yeah, there we go.
I don't think I've ever
prison door.
Well, I've never used your last name when I talk to you. I just call you Craig, So I want to make sure we're all pronouncing it right.
I just call him Superman.
Superman. You could call him the superhero maker.
The superhero
AKA
maker.
The superhero maker, which
There
is,
we go. That's easy. That's easy to say.
Yeah,
that's what most people
Instagram.
know you as anyways, is the superhero
Honestly,
maker.
Craig, the funny thing is, so I've met Craig in person, for those of you that are listening to the podcast. But honestly, when Drew said we were going over to his place and he was telling me his name, I'm like, I don't know who that is. But then he said, oh, the superhero maker. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I know who that is.
The world of social media.
We are of the social media world, and I have seen you many a times come up. So we're definitely excited to have you on the podcast here.
Yeah. So just so everybody knows, like how I got to know Craig was basically through FitCon, I think, through Dallin. Craig is one of the owners of FitCon, and I went to FitCon the first year, last year. And that's how I got to know you and like started following you and like, learning more about you. And so that's kind of how we came to know each other. But for those that don't know, much about you, Craig, let's start from the beginning, man. Tell us a little bit about your background, you going into the military, you were a Marine. Let's just kind of start, a little bit more about your background so my audience can get to know you better.
Yeah, how deep do you want me to go?
Well, let's just go as deep as you feel like, and we'll kind of go from there.
All right, that's what she said. All right, so
Craig, I'm already gonna love you. Okay, keep going.
So I mean, I started. So I was raised out here, pretty LDS, pretty hardcore LDS, and to the point where like if I said a curse word like shit, I would get grounded for 3 months. So that's how hardcore we were, right? So like I started lifting weights. About 12 years old, I just like saw Flex magazine and wanted to get forearm veins as bad as possible. And so I started with a 110-pound weight. That's all we had in our house. And I was doing forearm curls until I couldn't anymore. And all I wanted to see is the forearm veins in my wrist get up to my forearm. And once that was accomplished, I kind of stepped my game up. I got my first gym membership when I was 12. It was at the Lehigh Legacy Center. And I can remember doing chest flies for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never felt that in my life before. This is amazing. And, so downhill from there, what happened is, one of my young men's leaders asked me, like, when I turned 16, are you gonna, go start dating chicks? Because that's the age that, you can start dating in that kind of community. And I was like, no, I got to get buff first. And that was literally my response. And from then on, I jumped into the Marine Corps. I kind of had it, with my home and wanted to kind of, I thought with my balls. I didn't think with my head at that point. And so the Marine Corps was that choice. And going in, I was in really good shape. I played a lot of soccer. I did a lot of running. I trained for boot camp because they're like, you're going to have to do push-ups and dips and pull-ups. So I was at like 50 pull-ups and a ton of crunches within 2 minutes. It was like 170. And my run time was about 17:45 for 3 miles, which is phenomenal. And I was at the top of my class, and when we got to boot camp, everyone was like, the drill instructor, I remember specifically saying, some of you came in really good shape, some of you came in terrible shape, and in the end, you're all gonna meet in the middle. And I was like, damn it. At that point, like I knew I was in for a really rough time.
What?
And so at the end of boot camp, I ended up gaining 35 pounds of fat in Marine Corps boot camp because they just fed me. Yeah. It's more mental too, right? Like boot camp was actually very easy physically for me. But it was just, they fed you like cafeteria food. So I was on double rations too because I was so tiny. And so they were just like feeding me everything, like bread, and they made me drink soda. And, it was crazy. But at the same time, that's what they did. And I saw, we had one guy in my camp, and I saw he was like, couldn't do one pull-up. He could do one pull-up. That was the bare minimum. He like 1.5. And he was overweight. He wasn't that overweight. And he's just super tall and lanky. So, like his structure wasn't necessarily built for athleticism. And at the end of it, he lost 70 pounds. But at the time, he could only do 2 pull-ups in 3 months. And so at that point, you're looking at him, you're like, what went wrong here? If you lose 70 pounds, you can't do more than 5 pull-ups. We got a big discrepancy. And so that's what really kind of rocketed me into figuring out what real fitness was about. And yeah, and you know, because I mean, you should be doing 20 pull-ups on losing 70 pounds. That should be a no-brainer.
Yeah. So funny story really quick. Sorry to cut you off, but like I did this PFT with some Marines recently, or no, not recently, about a little over a year ago. And they invited me to come do it with them. It was fun, man, seeing like, you know, all different Marines of different backgrounds. Some could do 2 pull-ups, some could do like 52, kind of like you. And I remember doing the pull-ups and the sit-ups and the run. And then afterwards, like I actually went to speak on health, you know, to teach the Marines a little bit more about nutrition, right? Because you just eat what you're fed, right? And I remember after we did all that, with the breakfast burritos and Gatorade is what was served. So I totally get where you're coming from. It would be easy to gain 35 pounds, so I get what you're talking about. But anyway, so that's kind of where your fitness, you know, your interest for fitness, well, it started when you were 12, but you know, it kind of piqued your interest when you were in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. And I figured there's got to be a better way. And so my parents weren't too happy about, well, my dad was proud of me, right? But my mom kind of ran the show. And so my mom kind of booted me out of the house because I went to the Marine Corps in a sense and wasn't going to church anymore. And so at that point, like I kind of was homeless for about 3 days and I moved in with one of my buddies in his dirt floor basement because he was quite poor too, and so was his dad. And so, you know, I busted up to Larry Scott's facility. I found a good mentor in Bailey Hall, and he pretty much said, you know, if you come up here and you put in your due diligence, we'll do your certification for free. Just, you know, recommend people over. And so sure enough, you know, like when I grew up, my parents said you're going to be a lawyer or a car salesman. So at that point, like, you know, I had that personality.
High hopes.
Yeah.
So at that point, like, you know, I was able to bring people in and kind of pay for my certification that way, but I was able to mentor under Larry Scott, which is, I mean, invaluable. And he was so intelligent in the way he did things, and he learned under Vince Garanda. So in the old school style of bodybuilding, I mean, that's really what the gem of bodybuilding is. It's been so far distorted to what it is now, but it is kind of moving back, if you haven't noticed, with FitCon and everything, with the classic division. Yeah. So it's cool to see that.
Yeah.
And so at that point, like, I was able to see, you know, what true connection with your body was. He actually taught me, you know, the first thing he taught me was like, if you can't flex the muscle by itself, you have no like position adding any resistance to it. And at that point, that was massive. And that still applies today when I'm learning from, you know, with Ben Pekulski, he teaches the same thing. And so at that point, you know, kind of moving forward, I got a job at Gold's Gym as a personal training sales manager. And at that point, it was kind of just to get chicks too at that point. Yeah, you're a personal trainer. You thought it was hot. I would wear my personal training shirt to the mall.
Oh my gosh. And all the ladies. This is where men don't understand women. You know, my girlfriends and I always joke, like, if you have a Tinder profile and one of the pictures is of you shirtless, that girl is not swiping right. Okay, I just want you to know. Everyone listening to this podcast, this was free dating advice.
It's like that funny. Welcome. It's like that funny meme where it's like a guy, what a guy thinks will happen when he lifts weights. It's him with a bunch of chicks, but then it says reality, and it's him with a bunch of dudes.
Yep. You're like, what are you doing, bro?
Lifting weights, you know.
Sweating.
So it's kind of funny, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you became a personal training sales manager, not a personal trainer yet.
Yeah, I mean, so personal training sales and personal training goes hand in hand because I had to do a lot of free sessions to start the sale, right? So, but it was Walmart style training. It was the worst of the worst. I thought I was doing something good, and you know, there were, you know, the 2% that would see results and whatnot. But, you know, so continuing on, I stayed in that realm. I was always training. I had some clients on the side because I was trying to further what I could do as a trainer and a coach. And then, I mean, fast forward, I mean, it was pretty much the same stuff until I kind of found Ben Pekulski's MI40, and that kind of brought me back to what I learned from Larry, because I, in a sense, had moved away from it with the whole sales and, you know, training different modalities and whatnot. So Ben Pekulski brought me back into the intention of training and like you moving the muscle with your mind instead of just going through the movements. And why are you moving that? You know, why are you lifting? What is that weight doing for you? Like, is your bicep doing the whole work? Or are you compensating somewhere else? And those were massive for me. And, you know, it went from, you know, lifting heavy and going hard to lifting intelligently and adding resistance when necessary. And Yeah, I mean, that's how you save yourself. You know what I mean? I mean, there's a place to get strong, and that's during the big lifts like the deadlift and, the bench press and, some explosive movements like kettlebell swings and ball slams. But if you're in the gym slinging hundreds, like I tried it once, it's just, you're going to destroy yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people overlook the mind-muscle connection, that we kind of just go through the motions like, okay, I'm doing bicep curls now, okay, I'm doing dumbbell rows, I'm doing bench press, and then the whole time they're thinking about work, or they're thinking about life, and they don't see the results they want to. So I think that mind-muscle connection is something that's very, very, very overlooked in the industry. So that's kind of cool that you preach that, and you've kind of understood that, and you pass that on to those that you train. So tell us your journey to kind of where you are now to being the superhero maker. I know you're kind of getting there. Like at what point did that carry over to who you are now?
Yeah, so as soon as Marvel started doing all their superhero movies, and I think the first one was Iron Man, if I'm not mistaken, I looked at that, and then Thor came out and Captain America came out, and I was like, I need to rebrand, because I was thinking superhero something, right? Because I was always obsessed with Superman, obviously, and Batman and the Flash was actually my first original favorite. And I looked at that, I'm like, hey, we're moving from a pop icon culture to a superhero culture, and now everyone's going to want to get in shape. So at that point, I'm like, I need to make superheroes. And so what I did is I actually went into Jeremy Horn's gym with his fighters, and I was like, look, I can do stuff for you guys because you guys aren't doing anything that's going to be optimal. They weren't watching their nutrition too tightly. I mean, Josh Tyler, which he has been. Yeah. But he came from a wrestling background, so he was like 5% fat. He was running 12 miles pretty much every 3 days, and he was emaciated. And so, I stepped in. We did some modifications to nutrition. This was before ketosis. This was more of just a roundabout 40-40-20, protein carb fat ratio. And
yep.
We saw improvements. I mean, I stopped them from all running because, in a sense, it's like if you're going to be a fighter, you're going to fight, 18 minutes total, 3 5-minute rounds with 3 minutes, a break in a sense, or you're going to do 5-minute rounds with 4 minutes in a break. It's 30 minutes total. And why are you training anything over 30 minutes? You need to be as badass as possible in a maximum of 30 minutes. And so at that point, all endurance training pretty much went out of the window. And branding yourself as a superhero maker and training fighters was quite easy for myself, because fighters, in my opinion, are the ultimate athlete. And if you can get a fighter to click at every level, you can get any athlete to click at any level. So at that point, it went further and further to that. And then I saw the brain damage being done. And everything kind of shifted. So all honesty here, I did a whole summer full of mushrooms.
Okay.
The honesty in
I
this
love
podcast.
the honesty. Hey,
amazing.
no judgment here,
yes.
Craig. It's all good,
yeah.
man.
And,
keep going.
You guys are phenomenal. And so, I did a lot of mushrooms, and, that actually helped, in a sense, heal my brain. Because and I didn't know it was doing that. It seemed like the intuitive thing to do. And I jumped into that, and it really changed everything that happened. And all of a sudden, it was like, I need to focus on nutrition for the brain first, and everything else will follow. And that's when I started following, in a sense, carb backloading with John Kiefer. He was my first introduction, because he had that 2-week, fat adaptation phase, which I was actually stuck in because I failed 3 or 4 times trying to even get into keto. And carb backloading didn't work because he recommended junk food, which he actually came out later and said, hey, no junk food. I was wrong on that. It was a marketing tactic.
Yeah. I remember him talking about pizza and some kind of lemon-filled donuts or something like that.
It was a dream come true, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, people jumped on
amazing.
that.
Yeah, and then again, context though, because he was also talking about taking, extremely chubby power lifters who are already had this great base of muscle and dropping them to just 15%. So if you're going from 25 to 15 and you take out fast food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and just let them eat fast food and dinner, obviously they're going to drop to 15% body fat. So I think the context was a big thing that we all didn't get until later. And so getting into that, I actually started going into Mark Sisson's The Primal Blueprint, which he was saying, an extreme athlete doesn't need any more than 150 grams of carbs a day. And I was like, what the hell? That's crazy. And Charles Poliquin was a big leader into this too, when he said he had 80% of his Olympic athletes were on 70% fat. I'm like, what the hell? How is that possible? You know? And so at that point, I really started diving into that. He was actually my first introduction into neurotropics as well, because he's been using them with his Olympic athletes for so long, like alpha GPC, Bacopa, Huperzine, all those good focus supplements. And so I started experimenting there, and then I got deeper into the racetams as well, and this is all brain focus again. And then eventually it led me to ketosis. And at that point, the superhero maker journey, in a sense, was perfect. And the fact that go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, so at what point did you convert to ketosis? Did you experiment on yourself first, or were you experimenting on your athletes, putting them in ketosis and seeing the amazing results? Because it sounds like you're similar to me. You researched the science, you're amazed by all the science, like, wow, this sounds interesting. But the application of it, was it you first and your athletes, and then you were sold? Or at what point were you sold on ketosis?
Always me first. Always me first. Okay. I don't feel comfortable putting anybody in something I haven't done. And at that point, because you can't master it until you've mastered it, and then therefore you can't coach it, I believe, until you've mastered it. And it took, like I said, I failed 3 full times of even getting into ketosis. I was too high on protein. My bodybuilder instinct was like, oh, I'm so kind of preview of this. Sorry about that. I competed 3 times. And a big issue I need to bring up with that is my first show, I failed at even getting into. So like 3.5 times. I went with a coach, and he emaciated me. I was doing 4 hours of cardio and 900 calories in chicken a day.
What?
Yes. And
so it was abuse.
Right.
He abused you.
Yeah, a little bit.
Seriously.
My wife dieted with me, and we were just both like, we
dying.
Right. And a week out, my coach, he pulls me out. He's like, you're not going to make it. And so at that point, I'm like, what the hell? You should know if you're a coach at like 6 weeks if I'm not going to make that shit. Yeah. At that point, so I switched to another coach, and that coach put me on so much gear, I couldn't even see straight. And I thought that's because I wanted to be a pro bodybuilder, right? And so at that point, like, sorry, this is pre-ketosis. I'm sorry to date back here, but this is kind of...
that's okay.
So at that point, like, he ended up putting me on stage, and I looked good, but he was feeding me Diazide every 3 hours.
What's that?
What's
that for people that don't know?
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It's a diuretic, over the counter. Well, not over the counter. Sorry, it's a prescription diuretic. So
it just flushes out all the water in your body.
And potassium.
Okay.
And so what happened is he was feeding me them every 2 to 3 hours, and I actually had the prescription from the doctor. So it wasn't like I was going out, and I actually had the prescription for like the massive amount of testosterone I was running from the doctor. And because I pretty much told him I'm going to do it, and if he doesn't prescribe it, I'm going to do it anyway. So he ended up prescribing it. And what happened is, a day after that competition, I ended up going into full body paralysis over about 8 hours, to where I couldn't even move my head or neck and to look sideways. And at that point, my wife had to deadlift me off the couch, put me in a wheelchair, deadlift me out of the wheelchair, and rush me to the emergency room in Park City, where they measured my blood potassium level of a 1.3, which is the lowest they've ever seen in their entire time of being open for 13 years. And so,
whoa.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah, it was.
Whoa.
It scared the shit.
Good thing your wife can deadlift, man. That's all I gotta say.
Good thing your wife can deadlift.
Yeah, my wife's a boss. I tell you what. Like, she endured a lot of stuff through my trials and errors. And at that point, they said if you would have stayed 2 hours longer and not called, you would have died, and we couldn't have brought you back. So at that point, that was a bit shocking, because when I signed up for the Marine Corps, I kind of signed up for the potential I might die. They told me that a million times. It was like, cool. I'd take that risk, but I didn't sign up for that with bodybuilding, so that was a big shocker. And at that point, when I'm in the emergency room, I'm like, fuck this. I'm going to find out the most healthy way to do everything, period, so it never happens to anybody again that I come in contact with. And I actually relapsed again in the hospital. So the half-life of the Diazide kicked in, and I dropped down to 1.7 again, which freaked me out again, because I was going to a point where, like, okay, I'm feeling good, and all of a sudden I'm feeling like shit again. I was going to die. Of course, I'm not going to die in the hospital. They had me under control, but at the same time, that double whammy was just a big impact in the universe, and that's kind of where the superhero became the superhero maker, right? Yeah. Because every superhero has a massive, massive trial or tribulation in their life, and what do they do from it? They either become the villain or they become the superhero. And at that point, my choice was to help fucking people.
Wow.
So,
dude, that's an incredibly powerful story. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going though.
No, sorry, I had to take a breath. But
okay, yeah, no, that's great, man. That's such a cool story, and I knew some of that, but I didn't know all of the details, and that's some scary stuff, man. So thanks for sharing that with us, and I think it's an eye opener for people that are eating, because I like what you said about ketosis. It's eating for the brain, right? Nutrition for the brain, instead of eating to get skinny, eating to get ripped, doing whatever it takes to look a certain way. And that's what our society has become, especially here in America and all over the place now. People are just doing whatever it takes to, okay, how can I lose weight the quickest way possible with the least amount of effort? What's the trick that I need? And I think people are looking for that, and unfortunately their health takes a hit, and that's what I tell people all the time.
And they're not told, just like Craig, you had no idea the ramifications that would come from taking these diuretics, and it hadn't crossed your mind, oh, I could die from this. And I think most people, I even saw someone on my Facebook today saying that they're going to do a fitness competition, and my main question to her, I messaged her, I'm like, have you researched this? Have you made sure that you have a good coach? Have you made sure you have somebody that's not going to starve you? Or a lot of people will come out metabolic resistant, basically having problems with their metabolism after doing these events because they're not coached onto doing it the right way.
Absolutely.
And that's the problem.
Yeah,
that's the problem with our industry.
Yeah, and you've seen that firsthand too. So kind of shifting gears here, Craig, because I know that you train a lot of athletes. I kind of want to shift this to your average listener. Let's say someone that's really hasn't done ketosis or isn't an MMA athlete. Let's just say they're trying to lose 50 pounds of fat. Talk about ketosis for specifically fat loss versus ketosis for your endurance athlete or your MMA fighter.
Yeah, so what it comes down to is the reason I start training MMA fighters is everything can trickle down. So they're the ultimate athlete, and I can take whatever they're doing and trickle it down into the normal person, because in a sense, if you really tap into that individual, they want to perform. They want to become a superhero. They want to fucking be a badass. So at that point, if you can harness that kind of mentality and bring that out of them, they're going to want to perform, and they'll stop thinking about how they're looking or what they're doing to do it. And so they'll latch on to something. And as powerful as ketosis is, I've never seen any style of nutrition, and I've done it all. Trust me, I've done vegan, I've done vegetarian, I've done pescatarian, I've done paleo, I've done high carb, I've done low carb without fat. I've done everything for extended amounts of time to see what was optimal, and never have I seen some style of eating turn people into this machine to where they have this wonderful sense of personal awareness for the first time. They smoke cravings. They want to come into the gym and they want to kill it because their brain has been unleashed for the first time because it's not getting clogged by all this processed crap we're being constantly inundated with. And so at that point, we've been able to get them in ketosis. They're eating bacon and butter and eggs and everything that, you should kind of eat in a sense. And they're happy with their foods. And once they get past the little hump of converting over, they latch on, and it becomes a craving now. They crave real food versus chemically induced food. And at that point, everything switches on to optimal health. Muscle gain comes on, fat loss starts flying off. Not necessarily weight, but fat loss, because we want to gain muscle, because you want to perform. It's not vanity anymore, it's performance, correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's awesome, man, because I think by the time this airs, my episode with Dr. Oz will have aired already. But anyways, yeah, I remember being on there talking about butter and bacon and all these things that people are like, oh, I thought we weren't supposed to eat that. There's still this misconception that, fat is bad for you, but I think it's slowly starting to become more mainstream now. Your average person is starting to learn about this, but
you have to take it into context too. If you were only eating butter and bacon every day, that's not good for you. If that's all you were eating, if you're not getting in any micronutrients.
I think that's the misconception.
Right,
people are like, oh, that's all I eat all day. It's like, no. We're not saying that.
We're saying we eat a lot of other things, but we have a lot of healthy fats. The big thing for me, Craig, with ketosis, and I actually did try it out for for a period of time just to see. And actually, because I heard that it could actually help women balance their hormones, what are the positive and negative side effects of ketosis in regards specifically to women that you know about from your research?
Yeah, I think you're talking on a hormonal level too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because that's the biggest thing for women. A lot of women that have tried different diets, for example, if they were to just try a quote low carb diet as opposed to ketosis, a lot of research shows that causes a stress effect in women, and it can actually imbalance their hormones. So how is ketosis different, or how does it affect women compared to men?
So yeah, great point. And thanks for bringing this up because it needs so much clarification. So the science for ketosis is saying that it's healthier is out there. And the science for performance in ketosis isn't being done yet, but it's just done in the trenches right now. So when it comes to females, never in my life have I seen such great results from real ketosis. A lot of people get the low carb mentality and they forget fats, because fats are a fear factor for 90% of people I talk to. And that was my reason I couldn't get in. That was Catherine's reason I couldn't get in, because our fats weren't high enough. And our protein was way too high. So we're still on a low carb diet, which in a sense, gluconeogenesis is actually a really rough process for you to keep forcing. And so your body has to compensate by raising cortisol and doing a whole bunch of other different things it shouldn't be doing all the time. And so what you want to do is crank fat up, because I've had literally 5 clients now, male and female. So one in particular, her name is Amber. She had pretty much... one of her ovaries was pretty much toast. The other one was on the way. Her doctor said she would never get pregnant. We put her in ketosis for 3 months, and she's pregnant right now. So at that point...
Whoa, that's a pretty amazing testimonial.
Yes, my wife has gotten 3. So one of her other clients, my wife's clients, same thing, like told she'd never be pregnant. She just had a baby. And another one of her clients, and we have 2 males. Like one male was at the point to where... yeah, he was a certified plant-based nutritionist, and he's a doctor. He was coaching people on plant-based. He switched right over to keto. He went in vitro for his first 2 kids. Then he got his wife pregnant after being in keto for 6 months. So, like I said, the hormone jump, and we've seen free testosterone go up on clients in ketosis. And as they get older, which is supposed to be impossible. Okay, like you have to get hormone therapy for that, correct? That's what everyone says. So at that point, that's what I'm talking about. When it comes to women, like they need to stay higher fat. They need to really modify their protein. It doesn't have to be that high. And they actually can use a little bit of glucose. Because a lot of people, they think Atkins. They think higher protein, higher fat, which is not ketosis.
Yes.
Is not ketosis.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the misconception I had, because I thought this is just a low carb diet.
Yeah.
That it's just about cutting out bread. Cut out bread. But it's not. It's more about like you were saying. So like a percentage wise. So explain real quick the basics of macronutrients and about what you would need to be in to do ketosis, just so that women understand how this is not just high protein, low carb.
Yeah, so there's 3 levels, right? So there's a level of training of a beast chick, like someone who does CrossFit, someone who's an MMA athlete. There's, a workout level to where, they'll do some, glute kickbacks and they'll get on the treadmill. And then there's the sedentary level. All these 3 require something different. So we'll start at the sedentary level. So if you're sitting around, you might go for a walk. What we want to do is we want to be relatively very low in protein, almost 15, maybe 20% protein. 5% carbs and 80 or 75% fat. Right?
Okay. So and for people that don't understand that, everything you eat is either a protein, carb, or fat source. That's what macronutrients are. And the best way, if you're a beginner and you really don't understand the concept of what falls into what, is to download a free app like MyFitnessPal, and you can scan and track your food, and it will tell you your macronutrient split, so you can stay in the zone that Craig is just mentioning right here.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so that's the sedentary level.
Yes. So now the trainer level, like the one who's just kind of, doing glute kickbacks and working out, or, they're going and, getting a bro workout, chest and Jersey Shore biceps, So at that point,
chest and Jersey Shore
right? So you want to probably bump up to 20, 25% protein, still 5% carbs, and about 65 to 70% fat.
Okay.
Okay, now for the beast mode, right? So now we're looking at this point to where we can get down to 60% fat, 30% protein, and up to 20% carbs. So, I mean, the levels can play around everywhere. At that point, it just takes testing and feeling out on the process, right? Obviously, hiring a coach is going to be beneficial at every level at that point, whether it's for a month or 3 months, as long as they can guide you there. So those are the different levels, and that is a massive difference in how you're going to be adapted, how you'll get in, or if you even get in, different things like that. Because like the being stuck in low carb limbo, which is pretty much, if you follow Atkins, you're stuck in low carb limbo to where your body has depleted its glycogen and doesn't know how to switch over to fats yet. And so it's like trying to choose every day on which source of energy it's going to use. And so all it has in consistency is protein, which therefore it's turning over really harshly in your body and giving yourself a really hard time.
Yeah. And I experienced this when I was transitioning over to ketosis, and I got what they call the keto flu, and I thought I was dying.
Yes.
And
What are
I was going to say, and a big part of that, so if people are really interested in trying out the keto diet, and people know, and I've been very upfront about this, I'm not into dieting. I'm not into restricting the types of foods I eat or even necessarily the calories. I feel like a lot of women have eating issues. But that's not to say that you shouldn't try different lifestyles, especially depending on your body and what works well for your body. And that's why I tell people, you know, if, especially, for example, because I heard this could help women regulate their hormones, and it helps for women that are insulin resistant, and it helps for people that, you know, have, for example, some autoimmune diseases. Like, I've heard a lot of the benefits. So I said, you know, this is something good that you can try to see how well your body responds to it. But there is kind of a nasty transition period.
Yeah,
there,
what are
so.
some of your tips, Craig, for help for people that have tried or who think they've tried this before and they're like, it was so hard? Like, what are some tips for the keto flu, the transition that they
transition,
could do?
that's what I was going to ask.
Okay, so the keto flu is actually just some dietary mistakes or some errors that aren't quite seen. So none of my clients have had the keto flu because there's a lot of tools out there. If you don't use the tools, what we need to do is making sure you're eating enough. Okay, so if you can get your rested metabolic rate tested, that's going to be massive. All right, so when I got my rested metabolic rate, which is how much you're burning at rest doing nothing. So how many calories my body is going to use if I lay in bed all day and don't move.
Yeah.
Okay, so at that point, what happened is I went and got it calculated off my body fat and lean mass, and I was burning, it said 2,100 calories. Then I went and actually breathed, and it measured my carbon dioxide, and I actually burned 3,600 calories. Okay, so
what?
Yes, massive difference.
What?
Right?
Yes.
Wait, your resting metabolic rate is 3,600 calories?
Absolutely.
Wow. All I have to say is I'm slow clapping.
She's jealous because she wants to eat
and
that
I'm
much.
slow clapping over here for you.
Don't be
3,600 calories.
Don't be jealous, because I have to eat 4,500 calories on activity. It's really hard. Like,
Yeah.
it's.
I mean, I get that, but I don't feel bad for you. Right now, all I'm thinking of is 3,600 calories. Continue on.
No, but so at that point, what you want to do is, if you can't get that tested, then obviously you kind of go by feel, which is a little harder. Or again, I'm going to say hire a coach, and I can't. Like, I've hired coaches, and so I can't express how important that is. You guys are coaches, so you guys understand it too. And so at that point, you're making sure you're eating enough, because if you're not eating enough, what happens is when you're transitioning into keto, the first 2 weeks, you're going to see an automatic 20% deficit, because the transition from glucose to fats as fuel takes that amount of calories. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Yep, that does make sense.
Yes.
Okay.
So
make sure you're eating enough.
Yeah, so if you're eating low and you're knocking off 20%, we're in big trouble. You're going to be exhausted no matter what. Mm-hmm. Okay? So another one is, once you're in ketosis, you think about fat and water. They don't mix, right?
Yeah.
So you're actually in a state of diuresis. So at that point, if your water doesn't go up and your electrolytes, meaning real salt, Himalayan salt, sea salt, you're not salting everything, you're going to be in massive trouble again. And so that's...
Yeah, I didn't realize that. That was a big thing. I was not having enough salt when I started.
Absolutely. And we're talking like 5 grams plus a day, because obviously if you're on a carb-based diet and you're doing a lot of sodium, you're going to hit hypertension. You're going to get all these troubles that we're looking at, and doctors are saying, stay away from salt, stay away from salt, stay away from salt. But they don't understand that if you're in ketosis, you're in diuresis, at that point you need salt. But it's real salt because it has all your minerals and all the nutrients that you're not going to get anywhere else.
Yeah.
So boom, that is huge. Then Ketogenics, as you know, or Keto or Kana, those are massive tools. So the beautiful thing about those, if you start taking them from the onset of getting in or starting ketosis, by the time you hit ketosis in 2 weeks, you're actually keto adapted, which usually takes 4 to 5 weeks. So
what's the difference between that?
What's the difference between that?
Keto adapted.
Yeah, so the first 2 weeks, your body, so I'll get into the testing and everything. How's that? So
sounds good.
You have pee strips, right? So if you pee on a strip, it says you're in ketosis.
Yeah.
Not necessarily.
Used that before.
Not necessarily true. What it means is you're producing ketones. Okay, so your body in the first 2 weeks hasn't figured out how to use ketones. It does. The heart, lung, diaphragm, the brain, they soak up ketones regardless. However, the muscles, they haven't figured out, okay, this is a good source I can start using. So the first 2 weeks, you're becoming adapted. After 2 to 3 weeks, you get keto adapted. So you actually start using ketones in your muscular system. Therefore, you start feeling it. So if you take Ketogenics or Keto or Keto Kana or even ketonics now, there's lots of different options out there. So you can start at the onset when you start this diet. At 14 days, you'll become keto adapted. And so your body will understand you're using ketones, and they're all attached to minerals. So your magnesium, your calcium, potassium, and what am I missing? Sodium are all locked in there. So you're already presenting yourself with that. So you skip out any keto flu symptoms. Granted, you still need to salt. That is so, and drink more water. And if it's hot outside like it is now, you need to drink more water because your liver needs to flush. Your kidneys need to flush.
This is very good information, and you actually explained it in a way that I could understand, because when I listened to Drew's interview with the doctor, all I heard was blah, 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 blah,
Dom,
science,
Dr. Dom.
blah, 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 words you don't understand.
He's just very smart.
Blah,
and I tried
blah,
to
blah, blah. I couldn't even finish it. It's our own podcast, and I couldn't finish it.
I tried to tell him, like, hey, man, my audience is very, very basic, so try and keep
and
it
by
simple.
basic, I mean, everyone listening to this, we're normal, intelligent people, but we are not doctors. You know what I'm saying?
That's where I'm a buffer. I completely understand that's my role in this situation is the buffer between Dom and everyone else.
You have taught me more about ketosis in this podcast than anybody has up to date. So just wanted to say kudos.
I think you maybe even convinced her to do round 2.
There we go.
Actually, now that he's explained the difference between ketones and being keto adapted, I actually was curious. So I don't know. I'm not committing. I'm not committing. I'm not committing. I'm a woman. I'm not committing. I'm just saying I'm thinking about it. That's when we like to think.
To not commit. Come on now.
Exactly.
Well, I'm like I've been told I'm a man at times. Okay, so.
All right. Well, that's really useful information. I think a lot of people are going to find that very, very valuable. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit here because I want to talk about, you mentioned nootropics, neurotropics. There's a lot of different names for it. Okay, so a lot of people listening probably are like, what is he talking about? Okay, think of the movie Limitless. And there's this pill you take, and it was fake in the movie, but now there's these things called smart drugs, and Tim Ferriss has talked about it, and a lot of people in the fitness industry are starting to use it. Tell us the basics about it first, and then get into like your product, Lucid, and just kind of your understanding of what it does and what people can benefit from taking something like this.
All right, so first I'm going to say is that neurotropics have actually, like the piracetam family, have been derived from glycine, which is an amino acid which is naturally produced in your system, and you can eat it through a various different amount of foods. Pretty much any meat has it. And they have all been deemed safer than salt. So you can take salt more and it'll kill you first. So at that point, it makes a big difference on what it competes for in the brain, right? So it doesn't fry your brain like a lot of things out there, but it actually helps heal it. And so at that point, what's happening is I took a whole bunch of them and combined them together, and I used a couple sources like alpha GPC, which is a really good source of choline, which, if you eat a ton of eggs, you can get enough, but you'd have to eat a lot of eggs. And what I want to do was, again, focus on the brain. So I actually put ketones in there, not enough to really raise ketone levels as in the blood and get you into ketosis, but enough to maximize brain function, heart function, diaphragm function, kidney function, like the internal organs. So once those are all operating efficiently, the whole body can operate more efficiently and the brain can think more clearly. And so at that point, what we did is I wanted to come up with something that people could take that wouldn't hurt them, wouldn't give them a come down. Because another thing we have to watch out for is like caffeine. Synthetic caffeine is probably one of the crappiest things, in my opinion, that you can keep putting in your system. And you have to take more and more.
Hold up.
Go ahead.
Hold up. I want to break you in the middle, and I want to find out why you think that. I'm just curious.
Okay, so synthetic caffeine will actually give you an insulin response. Right? And you can't ever take enough because you always get accustomed to it. So no matter what.
So give people an example of
he's not talking about coffee.
He's not talking about coffee. I know he's not talking about coffee or tea.
Yeah.
So I want you to tell people the difference because I think this is actually a really interesting topic.
Go ahead, Greg.
Sorry.
Monster, pre-workouts, powdered caffeine pills, no dose, anything in 5-hour energy, like that stuff is all junk because coffee and tea, they have all these wonderful plant benefits that's going to help regulate the system and caffeine in your system. So when you don't take that with that, you don't get the bean, you don't get the antioxidants, you don't get the catecholaminates from the coffee. All you get is this pure synthetic caffeine, which elevates insulin, which insulin hypothesis has been proven wrong lately. And it's not insulin that's the problem. It's the constant elevation of it with glucose and caffeine and synthetic crap that we're taking.
Interesting. Okay, sorry for the little segue. I just thought that was interesting.
Starbucks, though, I mean, they do coffee, but at the same time, they're throwing a ton of sugar in there. So insulin spike anyway. So with a pre-workout, you're doing the same thing. And so, like I said, you can't ever take enough because you keep having to take more to get the same effect. I get a lot of clients who come in at they're a gram of caffeine a day, 3 scoops pre-workout and take a nap.
Wow, that's scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I used to be of that same mentality. Like I thought Monster and Red Bull, but stay away from coffee. You know what I'm saying? Like pre-workouts all day, pre-workouts for days, and thinking, oh yeah, this is gonna give me a better workout. But anyways, keep going, Craig. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
No, I mean, I was in the same boat when I was bodybuilding. It was like 3 scoops of Jack, 3 days, just like I didn't even feel it. And then I took a Monster, I didn't even feel it. So we've all been.
Yeah.
So at that point, what I want to do is help people get off that synthetic version of caffeine. And so this is another reason that I came up with this supplement. And what it does is actually has teacrine, which is derived from another tea, and you do not need to take more. And it's only at 25 milligrams, which is actually can be a sedative-like property. So what I've noticed is that obviously everyone is so stressed out, period. Everyone is overstressed. And so the biggest thing that I wanted to do, and I took this from fighters because if a fighter goes in and, okay, let's kind of put it in some context for numbers. Okay, so a normal person, let's say they're at level 5. A fighter is at level 10. Caffeine will bring a level 5 up to a level 10. Now, 10 is the max you want to be at before you start seeing debilitating returns. So as a fighter, if they're taking caffeine at level 10, they're going to kind of regress in a sense. They're going to stimulate themselves and gas out faster. Same thing with people. I mean, you got to think about the mom for crying out loud. I mean, she's got so much on her hands with kids and, if they have a dog,
Amen.
And then cleaning the house and then dealing with drama, it's all over the place. So
Craig understands us. Yes.
I do. I really do. And at that point, what I want to do is I want to reduce stress. So if we can give, the brain better function, all the internal organs better function, and then bring blood flow everywhere, and also provide nutrients to the system, that's going to help reduce stress and, in a sense, create a better sense of awareness to where you don't have your emotions riding you. You get to really kind of choose which ones you want to engage in. And so that's what, in a sense, Lucid is doing is giving you that control. So whatever holes you have it's filling those. And so like one of my competitors, like one of the females, she's the most stacked, beautiful, like, oh my gosh, her physique is phenomenal. It's muscular. And it's like, you guys know it's Nicole, and she's a phenomenal person, and you can see the potential in her, but she can't see it. So I give her a scoop of Lucid, and everything in confidence and abilities and outgoing, it all came out. It was like unleashing her true self on everybody. And it was dangerous because she is amazing. And so at that point, like, that's what's been happening with everybody. Mood boost to concentration.
So it's basically a mommy happy drug.
Yeah,
but without like the
without the actual bad stuff.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because a lot of moms, the mommy drug that people were taking was
Adderall.
Adderall, yeah.
Did you guys see that? I saw that crazy episode about.
I'm sure you could talk about the negative side effects of that, but versus Lucid,
that's
right?
synthetic cocaine, for crying out loud. It really is.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, which sounds nice in theory, but let's be honest, you guys.
Yeah.
Cocaine, not good for you. Okay, not good.
Valium was the huge one too, right? Big stress reducer.
Yeah.
Happy Valley's for a reason. And so,
so now you're saying Lucid is one of these smart drugs that can give you the same benefits, but in a healthier way.
I can't say that.
Oh, you can't say that. So you're not saying this, but if someone were to say this,
it may help. It may help with all these things.
Yeah, sorry, I jumped the gun.
I appreciate the question, but I'm just letting you know, legally, I can't say anything unless I want Big Pharma knock on my door.
Yeah. Gotcha.
So yes.
Well, what are some things? So you said Nicole experienced this. What are some other things that like your average person can expect to feel taking like Lucid or these nootropics?
Right.
Lucid, because there's different types of nootropics out there.
Yeah, tons. So Lucid is a specific combination of nootropics, and ketones and MCT, which is actually patent pending, so no one can touch it, because I don't want anyone abusing it at the same time. It took me 5 years to really dial this in, and I couldn't release it until 2 years ago because BHB hadn't been available in hands. And so at that point, which is beta hydroxybutyrate, which is ketones. Sorry, let me break that down.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. So at that point, we've had. Focus is a huge one. And like focus is a really hard thing to nail down because caffeine will give you focus, right? But in a sense, you can get shit done. You are so engaged in that situation that you don't really have to break out. And if you choose to break out, you don't have that lingering. So you can go from task to task and stay in task to task as long as necessary. And another one we're noticing is, besides the mood boost, is the sleep is phenomenal, and the lucid dreaming is unreal. Like, you're making decisions in your dreams, and they're so realistic and so wonderful, because like lucid dreaming is really hard to tap into, but this supplement, like after 2 weeks of being on it, the onset is immediate. And so
people, that would be like a whole other subject, but there actually is like some interesting studies and science behind what he's talking about, which is called lucid dreaming.
Yes.
Which I think is a phenomenal subject in and of itself. But yeah, sorry, keep going.
No, absolutely. And so, lucid, what it means, like the reason I called it that, and the symbol on there is, it's about being in the moment. It's about being completely aware of your surroundings and being able to choose which emotions you're going to interlock with. And so, sexual, tension has gone through the roof in a sense, not tension, but arousal, and sex drive has gone up, and we've had.
Great! Now every
the guys are writing this.
Is writing down.
Maybe the moms for their husbands too, but for themselves.
Okay, so I'll be up front again. So one of my guys texted me. He's like, "Hey man, is it normal to have boners left and right while on this stuff? Because it's insane." So there you go. That's what's happening there.
That is funny, dude. Okay, so we're kind of coming up on time. We're coming up on time here, Craig.
We just want to end on a good note.
That was a great note. But no, one last question before we get into our lightning round, dude. I kind of want to get your take on where you see the future of supplements going, because now we have like these exogenous ketones, we have these, your Lucid product, these new neurotropics. Where do you see the future of supplements going in the next 5 to 10 years, in your opinion?
Towards the internals. So like what we've done is like the BCAAs and everything is technically focused on vanity because we want to get bigger with them. Protein has been like, okay, it's been a subsidized, like, okay, it's a supplement. And, with bodybuilders, they're drinking 3 or 4 a day and they're using them as a meal replacement, which isn't the optimal way to do things. And so you want real food, right? That's what we're moving back to. And so these supplements, they're going like exogenous ketones, for example. You can take them whether you're not in ketosis or you are in ketosis. They will work in a sense. I've used them with competitors, and they can think clearly for the first time versus being completely emaciated and ready to kill their spouse and get divorced. They're actually happy. They're driving around and enjoying life during their prep again. And so at that level, the most debilitated situation, it elevates that. And never in the history of supplements has something being able to actually change the paradigm and actually physically maneuver you into another altered state, which is a better state than you've been in. And so that's what ketones are. And it is literally the revolution of supplements, because now when I'm taking Lucid and ketones, and I don't want to say this because I run FitCon, but I don't need any other supplements ever. Like BCAAs, protein, all that stuff goes out the window. I have my pre-workout. I have my sleep supplement. I have everything all wrapped in 2 supplements, and it's over. And at that point, I'm taking one thing, and the rest is whole food, real nutrients, and not chemicals. And that is going to be life-changing in my opinion.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I kind of agree with you. I think, like, how many more protein flavors can we come up with? How many more, BCAAs and pre-workouts can we come up with? It just with some crazy name and some cool packaging. It's like, is this going to be able to carry on for, the next 5 to 10 years? But then I discovered like ketogenics or these exogenous ketones, and the nootropics, like those kinds of things, I think are the future of supplements. I think most people are going to realize, okay, this is because it's like you said with ketosis, it's nutrition for the brain, taking care of the inside first. The outside will reflect that in the end.
Yes. And we're going to come up with a mitochondria supplement that'll help build new mitochondria and use mitochondria better than you ever have before. So that's what we're talking about, is the internal system being optimized versus, maybe I'll get some gains out of this BCAAs or this pre-workout.
That's cool, man. Interesting stuff, Craig. So, as you know, we always wrap up our podcast with a lightning round, some fun questions that we just, it's lighthearted, it's pretty easy going. So, you're up for this. So,
of course, I can already tell with your great personality, you're going to like this. Dun, dun, dun. So, just to clarify, just make sure you're aware of the rules. You have to answer as quickly as possible. First thing that comes to mind.
Boom. Let's do it.
You're in, right? Yeah. Let's do this. Okay. If you could be any superhero maker, who would you be and why?
Superman.
That's easy for him.
Superman.
Easy.
Yeah, I mean, he sets the example everywhere. Like, everyone wants to be Superman. So, like, if I can epitomize Superman, then, people can look up to me. I can lead for an example. And I take that with humongous responsibility into the fact that I will always stay open to everything and keep learning and never be shut off to any one way.
Okay, I thought you were going to say you liked the tight leotard and the cape, but that was a good response too. Okay, the first joke that comes to your mind.
Oh shit! So it's Cat Williams, right? He's talking about marijuana for some reason. He's like, this shit here. This is the crunkness of the crunk of the crunk. Have you guys seen Cat Williams stand up?
No.
Oh.
No, but we're gonna after this we're gonna look it up.
But now I'm gonna Google it.
Yeah, I don't know. He always pops in my head. He's the most hilarious individual, in my opinion.
That's good, man. That's
Okay.
That's the first one that popped up.
3 words that you would use to describe you. 3 words, adjectives. 3.
Boom. Meditation. And balance.
Nice, dude. I like it. Those were good ones.
Thanks.
Especially
I like
the
it.
boom.
I like it.
If you don't know Craig, he's always saying boom.
Boom.
Hashtag.
All right. Yeah, hashtag. If you could fight one UFC fighter, who would you fight?
Oh, shit. Might as well just make
Not that you would win, but like, who would you love to fight?
Anderson Silva.
Ooh, that would be. He's my favorite fighter of all time. Just FYI, just throwing it out there.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Okay, dude. I gotta ask you this because you said you gained 35 pounds in the Marines, but I'm assuming you were still kind of fit, even though you put on 35 pounds of fat.
Yeah.
Would you ever seriously do fit to fat to fit, gain 75 pounds of pure fat, no exercise for 6 months, and then take it off? Would you really ever do that?
In the perfect situation, yeah, I would do that. Absolutely.
What does that mean? Perfect
well,
situation.
Like if I didn't have, 5 businesses to run.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It would make it a little bit harder.
And Lucid and Pure Nutrition and Keto Academics. Like, yeah, that's a lot. So if I had the time, I would absolutely do it. Because I actually did it. Contest prep to contest prep, I gained 60 pounds and dropped 60 pounds and gained 50 pounds and dropped 50 pounds. It was 3 times I did that.
Yeah.
And so I love it. What you did with that show, and like I actually watch it more for the trainers, because to see them experience what it is to fucking struggle is priceless. It's so wonderful.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome, man. Thanks for your honesty. Well, we appreciate you coming on, Craig. Like, this was a great one. We'll have to have you on again in the future. Definitely, for sure, man. So before we go, though, where can people get in contact with you if they have questions? So your social media, your website, and all that.
Yeah, so the Superhero Maker is my Facebook page, and then the Superhero-Maker is my website, and it goes from there. Engaged Performance is where, with a 4 instead of performance, so performance, you can find Lucid.
Okay. And then Instagram or anything like that?
Yeah, so Instagram is Superhero Maker without the E at the end, because someone jacked.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Who is this person? Come on. That's okay. We'll put all this in the show notes.
Yeah, right. Thank you,
we'll put all this in the show notes. So, yeah, man, thank you so much again, Craig, for coming on.
Yes,
and,
thanks for the plethora of information at a level I could actually understand.
Yes.
Many things.
And Lynn will let you know if she does.
I can feel
I feel like a lot of I feel so much pressure now. I'm only doing it if Craig's my personal coach.
Okay. I'll make that happen.
Boom.
Okay.
All right, Craig. Good talking to you, man.
All right. See you, Craig.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you guys so much for listening to the Fit to Fat to Fit Experience podcast. We always appreciate you guys' support. Please leave us a review on iTunes. If you enjoy our show, please leave us a 5-star rating. Leave us a review. Feel free to reach out to us on social media too, to let us know future guests, future people you guys want us to have on the podcast. We'd love hearing from you guys. Don't forget our show sponsors, Ketogenics.com. Use the code FIT2FAT2FIT for 30% off to see what Ketosis can do for you.
And don't forget our other show sponsor, Quest Nutrition. Again, the information was in the show notes for them. You guys, if you want to reach us outside of the podcast, my social media handles for everything for Facebook and for Instagram is the number 2 Fit at Home. And if you go to the number 2 fitathome.com, my website, scroll to the very bottom, there's a place for you to enter in your email to join my newsletter. Join my newsletter, you guys. Every week, I'm going to be sending out a new newsletter. I haven't been doing it weekly, but I am going to be starting to do that. You're going to get a free recipe. You're going to get some of my favorite health tips, quotes, different topics about health and wellness. I specifically target females, so this is a female newsletter. So if you're interested in having something women specific where we can talk about hormones, the struggles we have, and of course have some other great health and wellness tip along with the delicious recipe, join my newsletter to fitathome.com.
Yep. And you guys, my newsletter is at fit2fat2fit.com. You can check out my website. You can check out my Fit to Fat to Fit journey on there. All my workouts and meal plans are on there as well. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter. Social media, as you guys know, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat. And all my handles are at Fit2Fat2Fit with the number 2. All right, you guys, thanks so much again. And we will see you back here next week for another great episode.
See you guys.